This video is going to be all about hosta. In this video, Steph and I are going to bounce around and show you like 10 of our absolute favorite hostas here in the Raleigh garden. We have dozens and dozens to pick from. We have become hosta collectors, and it's almost by accident, and you'll know more about why as this video goes along. First, the nerdy stuff. Hosta are in the asparagus family, so an asparagus relative. They're from Asia. They've been hybridized a ton over time, and you're going to see the variations in this garden. And I feel like in my time, in 40 years in this business, we've seen this faster and faster and faster, and we're seeing some more and more interesting things happening in hosta as time has gone on. My first hosta to kind of nerd out on here is called Orange Marmalade. Really love this hosta. We're kind of midway through a transition with this one. So this one, when it first uncoils in the spring, it's kind of a blue-green color, and then it develops kind of an orangey yellow color in the middle. That's where it gets this Orange Marmalade name from. And then that center of that leaf slowly fades back to almost all yellow and then almost all white by the end of summer. It's still got a little bit of that orange color left in it at this point as I'm shooting this in June, but if you back the clock up a month or so ago, it was much more of that in the center of the leaf. And then flowers, lavender color flowers will come up on this one, about 24 inches on a scape, held up big and tall up here. We'll talk more about the flowers as the video goes along.
Well, I'm stuck back here in a jungle. We planted this particular hosta here just to sort of keep it here for the time being, but it's sort of ended up staying here. I think next year we'll have to move at least part of it into an area that can actually be seen, because no one will ever see this back here. One of the cool things, though, is that even though no one sees it here, it loves it here. There's not a whole lot of root competition for it. It is in a quite shady area, and it has some even moisture. So although we have a lot of dry shade in our landscape, and we have hostas there as well, this moist area is just what it wants. So what a great hosta, though. Let's talk a little bit about this particular hosta that I love so much. It's called Sum and Substance, and it was the 2004 perennial of the year. It is a fabulous plant. These large chartreuse leaves, it can get 2 or 3 feet tall. It blooms during the early summer, a pale lavender color. And one really kind of cool thing, it is supposedly, which is good back in here in this moist area, it is supposedly, because it is a thicker leaf and stem, it is more, the slugs don't go after this particular type quite as much. So Sum and Substance is a great plant.
This is one of my absolute favorite hostas here in the garden. This one's called Dancing Queen. And like Sum and Substance, which Steph just showed, it has a very large leaf. This one is very chartreuse. It's starting to lose color now. When this one comes out of the ground in the spring, it is really, really vibrant. Over the course of the summer, it loses a little bit of that as we go. Gets a similar flower spike on it as well. I really love the contrast this one has with these blue flowers on this hydrangea back here. Sometimes things are accidental in the garden. You plug something in and you don't know. At the time, I don't know how this is going to look, when you do this. The hydrangea's in a little bit of a wilt this afternoon as we're looking at this. It's been a hot, sunny day, but it'll stand back up this evening. It's got plenty of moisture, but I love this contrast. What is starting to happen, though, is the hydrangea's gotten some size on it, and that hosta, being a very vigorous growing hosta, and it's had a rock in front of it that it's been able to get some moisture. Unlike, again, like Steph said, there's some dry ones back here that aren't as happy or aren't as vigorous. It's about time to divide this one. And I put up a video on specifically dividing hosta last year or the year before, I can't remember. Lots of people have watched that video. People are interested in learning how to divide hostas, obviously. The time to do it is as they're emerging in the spring, when you can really see where they're starting to come back, or in the fall as they're starting to decline, but while you can still see them enough to be able to dig them out without damaging them. That's kind of the ideal time to do it. I will say that if I had a few cloudy days, it's the beginning of June right now, if we had a few cloudy days coming up and it was reasonable temperatures outside, I'm the type of person that I would dig that thing up and I would divide it if I thought I absolutely needed to. But again, that early spring period when they're waking up and fall when they're going dormant is kind of the ideal time. And you can just dig them up and chop them and share them with neighbors or divide them through your garden, whatever you want to do with them.
I love plants with a story, and this one has a lovely story. I also love it when the stories that someone quite nice and wonderful gave it to us. So this plant was given to us by Lynn Swanson, and if you remember the videos we've done with her, she is an aficionado of Japanese maples. So it's really great. I commented on how beautiful this this hosta was in her landscape, and before I know it, she gave me some. So this, I just love it. It's got 3 different primary colors. It's sort of got a creamy white, and the sort of the light chartreuse, light green, and then the margins being dark green. Oh my gosh, it's just so beautiful. Now I'm going to talk about a little bit more about what Jim was talking about, and that is dividing hostas. I'm going to say, why would you go ahead and divide hostas? One reason would be it's gotten too large for the area. You can certainly divide for that reason. Another reason, maybe you're spreading some of moving the same hosta to different locations in your yard, so it's repeated throughout. That's another reason to move a hosta. Additionally, perhaps it needs a little more protection. Maybe you're finding that it's right in the middle of the grazing area for deer, which you can tell by our lovely Brauelia that we became a grazing area for deer a couple nights ago. So that was a bit of surprise, but they've left our hostas alone, oddly, and I better knock on wood for that one. But so again, perhaps you would be in the dinner table area for deer, or slugs for that matter. Maybe it's an area that is just a little too moist, too many slugs, and you want to move it to an area with a little more airflow. So protection, air movement, maybe it's indeed too dry. You just find that the cultural requirements of this plant aren't being met by where you put it. So there's many reasons why you'd want to move a hosta.
We've shown off variegated hostas, chartreuse, large-leafed hosta. There's all kinds of different forms here. There's some that are virtually solid yellows and then solid greens, and then now over to blue. This one was really very blue as it came out of the ground. It'll lose a little bit of that in time. This one's called Jetstream. We got this one up at Green Hill Farms, a little north of Wake Forest, North Carolina. Bob Solberg is who has that hosta farm, and he's introduced a couple, and I'm going to show you one. Introduced a lot of hosta, and I'm going to show you one of those coming up in just a second. But we've been really fascinated with Jetstream. We put this very small in the container hosta along the path here when we got it, and it has just gone wild. We don't consider, I consider some hosta to be more vigorous than others, obviously, but this one has been to the extreme. It's not in a particularly an area that I would thought that would have thrived next to. It's a very dry area where my neighbor just kind of mows some weeds back and forth over here. There's very little for this thing to work with, and it is doing all it can. This is definitely a candidate for me to pop out of the ground this fall and divide, maybe give away some or whatever. This one will have lavender flowers on it mid-June. If you're ever here for one of our open garden events, which will typically be around the 3rd weekend in June, that's when most of the hosta are in peak flower. Some of them may have finished a little bit at that point. Some of them will be just getting started, but that's probably about the spot where they're going to overlap. Some of these are white flowers, lavender flowers, purple flowers, and then some breeding going on for pink flowers and red flowers and all kinds of things that I think we'll see more and more of as time goes on. Once we've seen some red introduced into them now, and I'm going to show you that in just a minute. Once you get that red somewhere in the plant, you can really introduce it to all parts of the plants through selective breeding. But some of the hosta have fragrant flowers, some very large flowers, some smaller flowers, but what you'll notice when you're here at the open garden, or if you have hosta, obviously, is they're great pollinator plants. When they're in full flower, the bees are, all up in there. You see little bee butts all over the place where they're trying to get up in those hosta flowers and get that pollen out of them.
It does not get much more beautiful than this hosta. This is called Rainbows End, and it's just gorgeous. The way it's almost a musicality, the leaves. They have a wave to them. It's just a beautiful plant with chartreuse and mainly green margins. Just a gorgeous plant. It was the perennial hosta plant of the year in 2012. And actually Striptease and Sum and Substance were as well. This is just such a beautiful plant. Now how would I use these in my landscape? Well, first, obviously, like we said before, we would take into account the cultural requirements, but we'd also think about design with hostas. There are greens, there are blues, there are chartreuse, there's so many different colors. So you can use them as accents, whether it be for the leaf color, solid or variegated. You can place them near contrasting colors. Like with this one, I would not put it necessarily next to a variegated shrub. I would pick a nice glossy green broadleaf evergreen, most likely, or maybe even a conifer if I had one in a fairly shady area. I would also try to pick a leaf shape that was a little bit smaller or larger. It'd have to be really large to be larger, but perhaps I'd use ground covers that were small leafed, or I'd use shrubs that, like the big leaf clayer over there. That's a good contrast as well. So you can create such great contrast using plants that pop like this. Additionally, think about the colors, like where would a blue hosta look? Would you want to contrast that with a variegated plant, or a bright chartreuse plant? Or how do you want to contrast it? What kind of scheme do you want to create? Like Jim has talked about, we could, and I do this, I love to buy, I might as well, instead of my plant nerd shirt on that I have right now, I could be hosta nerd, because when I go out and I see them for sale, I always really am torn if I don't get one. So, but when I get home, I move it around the landscape and find contrast that works together. For instance, I've got, this is the same color as that, but with the dark green, it's a good contrast. And we have got curly fries right here, and the shape of this leaf is so much different than this hosta that it creates a good contrast as well. Contrasts with the fern behind it. So there's so much texture involved in designing shade landscapes, and hostas just can really be a great aspect of a shade landscape design.
There's lots of size difference in these hostas. That Rainbows End that Steph just showed you will get maybe 18 inches in height, something like that. We've shown you some with much larger leaves back there. There are ones now on the market that can get 42 inches tall, 46 inches tall, giant hostas. And once you have something, then you can really start working with it. So if you have giant leafed hostas, those can be selected for that trait and get larger and larger leafed hosta over time. These, you know, you introduce some trait into them somewhere, and boom, you can start to work with that. This is an example of that. This hosta is called First Blush. This is Bob Solberg's introduction. I just mentioned that we went up to his nursery and got that blue hosta that I talked about just a minute ago. He introduced this one and the one curly fries back there that Steph had just talked about in that Rainbows End conversation back there. But you see, look at this beautiful red petioles, or the part that holds the leaf up. That red is a real breakthrough in hosta, and there's so many great hosta breeders around the world that once that red gets in there, this one, it has red tips, a little bit of red that streaks up the leaf a little bit, but we've already seen now that red being introduced right up through the center of the leaf, and we're going to see probably nearly solid red hostas in the future, and then introduced into the flowers and everything else. It's just the way this works is that you find one that's diminutive and you race after that. You find one that's giant and you race after that. You find a color that you like and you race after that by crossing them. So I think we're going to see from this one in particular a lot of advancement in color and foliage, different kinds of foliage color. Purple flowers on this one, about this tall. I will tell you that this little section right here that we're showing you is a lot less vigorous than some of the ones that we're showing you in the back garden, where it has a little bit more moisture to work with. We've got a lot of root competition from a tree that's next door to us and various other things over here. Clay-based soil and root competition, not the best combo really for very, very vigorous hosta, but I will say they'll adapt to it. These have been a little bit slower. There's 4, 5, 6, 7 hostas right here beside me. Again, didn't mean to become this big a hosta collectors, but all of these have started slower in this spot than they would have otherwise, but they're breaking through it. And I can see year over year, they are starting to get a bigger, better, fuller.
Well, I've come upon kind of your basic green hosta. I actually think there's not enough just plain ones now. We love variegation, but if you go somewhere, it's really hard to just find a lovely green hosta. And this is an old school, lovely green hosta. It's called Royal Standard. And for me, I love plants with a story. We all know that Father's Day is coming up, and so I'll just real quickly recount, which I've already said this once in a video, but this plant's from my dad, and he's been gone since 1995, so it's been quite a while now. But when my mom moved, I dug up this Royal Standard hosta. He loved hostas, but you know, it's really interesting. Back then, you picked Oreo marginata, you picked Oreo undulata, I think it was. I can't remember, something like that. Royal Standard was around, Siebeldiana elegans, and just a few hostas, really. Back then, there weren't as many to choose from. So just like Jim was talking about, the breeding of hostas and how it's changed, and we've gone all the way to the petioles being red. So, but this goes back to old school. This, I think it had a plant patent somewhere in the mid 60s, so it is a very old hosta, but it's such a beautiful plant without having to have a lot of difference. It does get fragrant lavender blooms, and this one has 4 of them on it right now. So we've lost some major branches in this area. And of course the Miss Kim is totally gone. So it's a lot hotter and drier than it has been here. But this Royal Standard has just really risen to the occasion. It doesn't have any burning or anything on it. I think that maybe if we had some white or chartreuse ones with this much sun, we might get some late summer burning, but this one should be just fine. Royal Standard, what a great hosta.
Just surrounded in hosta in this garden, no matter where you go to talk about them. But I thought I'd talk about a miniature one, because we're talking about giant ones and small ones and variegated ones. But this is combines blue with miniature size. This is mouse ears, or blue mouse ears. I think there are a couple of these, and we have a few other. Several other dwarf hosta here in the garden with very small leaves. This one's a little more dwarfing than it probably would be if it had a little more moisture. I think it'd be probably double this height at this point if it had a little more moisture to work with. It will get lavender flowers on it during the early summertime here. This is going to be different for different folks depending on where you're from. Most of these hosta, I haven't even said in the video, are hardy from zone 3 to 9. So lots of people watching can grow hosta. They do require a dormancy though. So they require something below like 28 degrees to get them asleep, okay, and then keep them asleep for a little while for them to come back out from that. That's why they wouldn't grow in like zone 10. Maybe somewhere, but for the most part, they need to go to sleep. They need that rest to come back out from that. But this one, I said, combines that a dwarf in size, so it's perfect for along the edge of a path, next to a rock, in between rocks, and it has that blue foliage, dwarf size, and it also has a very thick leaf on it. Steph mentioned that earlier in the video, that some of these much thicker leafed hosta are resistant to slugs and snails.
My 5th hosta selection is called Stained Glass. This one is out there in the trades. You can see it all over the place being offered for sale. What a beautiful plant though. It's called stained glass because of the variegation and the prominent veining. Supposedly makes it look kind of like a stained glass of sorts, but it's such a beautiful hosta. It was the 2006 Hosta of the year, so I've had the fourth. I didn't mean to, but 2004, 5, 6, and 2012, I believe. Apparently I like the ones that win awards. I don't know, but what a beautiful plant. Real quickly, just to talk about exposure for hostas. Jim was talking about them being hardy in zone 3 to 9. Keep in mind, if you're in zone 3, you're going to be able to really keep it. It can move into the sun a little more than we can. If you're in zone 9, you really don't want to put it in too much sun, especially the higher the zone. If it's a chartreuse or white, if it has different light colors, they would burn real easily. So keep that in mind. It's a great plant though for us. One thing that it does do for us here in this dark corner of our landscape, if you put things with brighter colors, it can really make the area more vivid, bring out more color and brightness in a landscape. So hostas of chartreuse and white colors can really help you in the design element as well. So obviously we love hostas. We just can't get enough of them in our shady and semi-shady areas of our landscape. They just sing. Do you have a favorite hosta that you have in your landscape? Let us know below, and maybe we can try to get that one too. I would really love that. So anyway, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.